Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And today we're going to talk about the publisher media relationships, what they're all about. And down there, I'm not saying she's the best, although it's Jess, but everyone is also the best because everyone else is also the best. Because you're not just the best, everyone is. That's what I'm trying to say.
But we can all be
best. Maybe we can all be the best. Maybe we can all be the best in some manner. And over there, equally likely to cause bliss, it is the person known as Janice. And over there, it is the one known as Nikita. And in a moment, I will stop singing, and then there will be more sense to what we're saying. Publisher media relationships is what we're talking about. Publisher media relationships, I'm not gonna shout. Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good whatever it is, wherever folk are. It is Busy Beats and Board Game Blether, episode 388. And that's 12 days away from the grand episode 400, which I am very excited about. And today we have some amazing people. Nikita, Janice, Jess, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having us on. Yeah. It's always good to come and say hello. Hi, Bez.
Oh. Hello, Jess. Hello, Nikita. Hello, Janice. Hi, as if we haven't been talking backstage for like a good few minutes. Now, of course, we are all publishers. We've all designed games, we've all published our own games, and we've all had to market them in some manner. We've all had to collaborate with media folk, whether that's for reviewers, just get in front of Instagram folk, whatever, how to play, maybe doing a bit of media ourselves, but it's that relationship between ourselves and reviewers and where the obligations lie that I felt it would be really interesting to chat about. And sometimes those expectations might even turn sour. But before we get into all of that, and before we have all our regular bits, can we talk a wee bit about who we are, maybe going clockwise?
Hi, I'm Nikita from Atkin Games, and I have self-published 2 games so far. I have another 3 coming up on Kickstarter soon. So I'm right in the middle of arranging loads of reviewers at the moment, so it's good timing.
I'm Janice. Sorry.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, I'm Janice, go ahead.
I'm Janice, so I've run games. I have my 3rd game on Kickstarter right now. I sort of focus on the short, puzzly, cooperative solo, and just have our first competitive game at the moment.
Oh. Hi, so I'm Jess. My 2nd game is coming to Kickstarter this summer. Not entirely sure when this summer, but that's Library Labyrinth, which is a whole team of me and my friends doing it through Descent Games, which is how I published my first game 2 years ago. But at the moment I am, as well as that, then there's a game jam I'm running as well. So I'm feeling particularly busy and we need to talk to more reviewers and more media folk, and we're feeling a little bit like we're drowning in some of the media stuff at the moment. So this is a good chance to come and talk to people and say, how do we all do this? Because sometimes it feels like an uphill task.
And I am Bez, I love making games, and yes, best known for Yogi, which is sold internationally quite well since Gigamic released it. And I'm proudest of the LDEC, but in the past year I've been doing a lot of streaming, to the point where Twitch says I've been doing it almost 1,000 hours, but I did do it quite a bit before I started on Twitch, so I've probably done more than 1,000 hours at this point. But yeah, let us go to the first regularly scheduled section, and let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So what is a thing? And let me shuffle ourselves around. And yes, what is a thing that you have been enjoying recently? I am going to say looking after cats has been a highlight of mine. Jess, feel free to say one or two things.
Ooh, well, I have been looking at bookmarks recently for two different reasons. One for this game jam that I'm running, so that involves putting something, really, really small. So making a tiny, tiny game, which could be on a bookmark. The other reason is because we're thinking of doing bookmarks for some of our library labyrinth marketing. And so that has been a highlight, trying to work out what you can get on a bookmark, because you can't get that much on it. It's fun, though. It's fun, I promise. Okay,
if
so
you had two bookmarks, you could slide them out and up and down and next to each other.
You're just making it far more complicated now. Two bookmarks, twice the complication. But yeah, that could definitely work. Janice, let's go up. Janice is busy working out how the bookmarks would go next to each other.
Yeah, you have two bookmarks and you just print different either side. So you don't have to do your printing. You have one bookmark on the front and the back, and you can slide the back up and down. And so then you don't need two print runs then.
There you go.
Yeah, only one design. So what I've been doing, I've been enjoying sitting out in the sun the last couple of days. At lunchtime, breakfast, it's warm enough to sit outside again. So that is definitely my recent highlight, being able to sit outside and enjoy listening to the birds and watching the squirrels run along the fence and being outside. Rather squirrels.
Okay, so my recent highlight is that I booked my first COVID vaccination, which means I could book a weekend where I get to go see my parents for the first time in like a year and a half, and my in-laws. So we're going to have a weekend of visiting 3 weeks after our first jabs, which I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, that is really exciting, because suddenly you get back to like normal. So yeah.
A quick hello to Andy, who's in the audience, who says, "Love the bookmark idea. Sometimes a narrow brief can spark inspiration. And I am tempted to say we sing happy birthday to Andy Hopwood, although it will be terrible because of lag. But the question is, should we try it anyway? Let's vote, yes or no." Okay.
Let's try it.
Bez can lead us in.
Can I sing on mute? Can I sing on mute?
Let's
Is that
try
right?
it.
I don't think Andy wants it to happen.
No, you can't mute yourself. That defeats the point.
Let me lip read as I do it.
3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andy Hopwood. Happy birthday to you.
Did it work?
Hip hip hooray.
It might have worked.
Hip hip hooray. And I know it's not needed at all, Andy, but we wanted to do it, and I am going to enjoy. Apparently that was spectacular. Was it spectacularly bad? Is that what you're saying?
Just don't watch the feedback afterwards.
Hello,
we'll never know.
Who also says happy birthday times to Andy. And yeah, of course, it would be remiss of me not to give a very quick shout out to what I imagine might also be a wee recent highlight for an ongoing campaign, Janice.
Yeah, Pilfering Panda's funded in 30 hours, which is a record for us. So we're really, really pleased with that. And we are approaching our second stretch goal now. So we're sort of around 20-something backers away from our next stretch goal. So that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
We're pretty chuffed.
That is fantastic, and of
It
course,
feels like weeks ago now.
I mean, it was just how many days ago was it? Was it on Tuesday, just last week?
Yeah, it was just over. Yeah, it was about 10 days ago.
Oh, okay.
No, and we
So
launched a week ago Wednesday.
But congratulations on far. And if anyone in the chat has any recent highlights, then feel free to let us know. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the questionably quick questions. Okay, first question, as always, is what time is it? Where are you? Now, I think we're going to probably have to repeat the time, but here it is 10:11. I am North London near Finsbury Park. Where are you, Jess?
So it's 10:11 here, and I am about, I don't know, 50 miles or so to the west of you. I'm in Reading. It might not be 50 miles, but it's something like that. But it's, it's exactly the same time. And Janice, you're south of me.
It's now 10:12 apparently, and I'm just a bit further. We're going to go. You've gone west and now going south of Reading, so I'm just north of Southampton. So not too far away from you.
And I'm exactly the same time at 10:12, and I'm probably about 3 or 4 miles north of Janice.
You could almost have met up in person to do this one.
We
Almost,
could.
but not quite.
I mean, maybe once you've got your 2 vaccines, maybe this will be the start of a beautiful relationship.
Genuinely, I was supposed to meet Janice just before lockdown.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you mean last year?
Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And
hello, was there a
Keymaker
pre-COVID
Music.
time?
I don't remember.
Seems like a long time ago.
I think I remember hugging someone other than my husband and cat at some point. I have vague memories of it.
It must have happened, or maybe it was a dream.
Time ruler
Someone's
is
up early or late.
Yeah, very late, I imagine. New Mexico, USA, and Keys, thank you for joining us. And if anyone does have any questionably quick questions, then feel free to let us know in the next minute. But otherwise, we're just going to talk about the brilliant thing, what's a little thing which is brilliant. Now, let's talk about media, not just, publisher media relationships, but media in general, like whether that's letters, mass-produced, not letters, like newspapers, mass-produced stuff, like televisions, radio, internet articles, whatever. Why is that a brilliant thing? Why are songs and comics, do they form media? I think they do. But yeah, why do you think they're a brilliant thing? I think they're brilliant just because I think they're a great way of communicating and bringing people together. What do you think, Jess?
Well, if I was giving a really glib answer, then I'd say that newspapers were brilliant because I used them for packing up my games. When I was self-fulfilling, I got through so many copies of old newspapers, and I got very good at working out, exactly how many pages, etc. Because we were really trying to cut back on the plastic. Plus, we got newspapers anyway. But I bought them in the first place, so I must have liked them, right? The written word always appeals to me much more than visual things, so I really like the idea that you read something and it's not only that it's communicating, the key facts and the message, but it's communicating, the feeling of something as well. You're reading and you're seeing these pictures in your mind. Reading is like a shared hallucination. That's what it's like. You read something and you're like, this is what the person meant. This is great. And you can conjure up this image. So I think that magic of managing to communicate a feeling through words, that is a brilliant thing.
No, it's only
Bez
recently
is
I found
like,
out, but-
what?
Janice?
So it's only
No,
recent.
I love that. I love that. I thought that was a brilliant answer. I was just expecting it to go round clockwise.
So it's only recently I realised that seeing images in your head was a normal thing, because I don't see any images in my head, so I don't have that shared hallucination, unfortunately.
Normal is relative.
Yeah,
You know, what's normal to me is going to be completely different to other people. It's that whole thing about how, you know, the world is made for men, for example, and I'm like, I'm 5'2". I can never reach those high shelves or whatever.
Oh yeah, in the supermarket, climbing up to get some stuff off the top shelf.
Exactly. Climbing up is definitely normal.
It is definitely, yeah, I agree with that. Oh. So media is good because it's a way to express yourself, and you can read lots of different points of views if you choose to. And so I think that's great, is that there's all these different bits that you can pick and choose, you can have abroad. The unfortunate thing is a lot of people don't and just look at one thing. So I think it is a brilliant thing, but also it has its negative, because it can just reaffirm a certain viewpoint and not expand your horizons, which is something it is so perfect at doing. So yeah, I'd say it's a mixture.
Okay, so I think I entirely agree with both of you. And the brilliant thing that's stuck in my head now is that obviously something that Jess read ages ago and then put in a box is that in someone else's house, and they may choose to read that. And I quite like that you just kind of. So all of my packing materials are, because I get so many boxes come to my house, and I have boxes and boxes of previous packing materials that I then pack other people's things in. So I'll never have the newspaper issue, but I love the idea that someone will have received your game and then gone, oh, and here's a nice article about.
Well, actually, so many of the ones that I was posting out during the pandemic were from, things that had happened long before that. You know, so there'd be this really nice, bright article about, best places to go traveling or whatever, or, cheap flights or something. And I'm like, this is entirely not relevant. But I did get a message back from one person who said, thank you for putting the puzzle section around my game.
I want to apologise if I'm speaking over people. I want to give I think I'm having some really bad connection. Quick hello to Jamie. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, I might try reconnecting.
I think it's me.
Minutes. Hopefully.
Last time I was on, this happened as well. No, not last time I was on. The first time I was on, this
No.
happened.
I have a very bad connection today. I'm going to try a different. But people, I just want to appreciate you all. Feel free to comment questions from like, follow, and let me move myself somewhere different. There we go. And let's first question of this is why to connect with media people as publishers to.
Why would we want to connect with media people as publishers? I think because Bez has moved herself. I'm going to assume that should be Janice answering the question first.
Thank you. I think it's a bit of a partnership, really. As a media person, you want to get, or in the gaming industry, you want your blog read by people, you want your work read, you want it seen. And as a publisher, you want your game seen, and you're working together. They help you by writing something about your game. And then in return, you're sharing it, which is raising their profile there. So there's this partnership going on that if you don't share it, then you are kind of doing them a bit of a disservice, because what they want is more traffic to their website. They want people to see, because they're doing something which is a passion. And I think for a lot of us as well, it's just about a passion, and we want to share our passion. And so we want to help each other. We want to help share each other's passions, and whether that's writing or game designing, we can help each other. No matter how big or how small, it's a way to just be in partnership with each other, and just helping each other get the word out about. I mean, some of the smaller blogs, they are amazingly written. They're a little bit different, and more people should know about them. And so I want to help get people to see that, and not just read about my game that they might be interested in, but also hopefully go back and read about all of the other stuff they've written as well, and perhaps get some new followers and subscribers to their blog or whatever it is, and hopefully as a side shoot, maybe more people find out about what I do too. So yeah, that's why I see it as this a partnership between the two. Let's see, Nikita.
Oh, don't. I genuinely can't elaborate on that. It's perfectly said. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that so for me specifically this time as well. So my last game, I was just trying to go, well, I'm not known, so I'll look for big reviewers who have as big a following as possible. I have a few thousand people on Instagram and Twitter who might also benefit from seeing what they've got going on. But then this time I've focused a lot more on smaller reviewers, because I feel like I'm in a better position to now. So I now have some nice relationships with people who've reviewed in the past, and I will always use them because use them doesn't sound nice. I will always send them my games and see what they have to say, because we have a really nice relationship together now. But I'm also in the process of building new relationships, which is really lovely. And I love the panda. Hello.
Oh, hello.
I'm waving at the cat.
That was Frankie.
Briefly. Hi,
Very
Frankie.
cute.
Frankie has just come in from outside, so does have
Oh, sorry. Lovely.
But
Yeah. I think there's probably just one thing I want to add to that, because I think you're both absolutely right. And the thing I want to add is that the thing is that when we're talking about marketing, then often we're talking about advertising, and that feels a bit seedy sometimes to me. There's this perception that you're like, you're trying to part people with their money. You're saying, hey, you've got to come and get this. But actually, supposing that we don't do any advertising and any marketing, then we're relying upon people, just happening to know who we are, just happening to know that we've got something good going on, which equally feels really selfish. It feels like we're being, it doesn't feel inclusive, because we're saying you can only get this, supposing that you've been told about it. This is a secret club and you have to have been told by somebody in order to know about it. So, so advertising is making things more available, more democratic, more readily available to everybody out there. You're saying, hey, here's this thing. So yeah, it's absolutely a partnership between the person making the thing, the people who are trying to get the word out, which shouldn't be seen as being dodgy in any way. Though clearly there is that sort of, there's an ability for it to go really dodgy, but that's more about the people rather than about anything else. You've got to do it in order to be inclusive. That was very bits all over the place.
I totally get
my
what
mind
you're
is up
saying.
here.
A quick hello to Yoda. Thank you for popping in. And I think I embraced what you're talking about, Jess. I can't remember when it was, but it's kind of like, if your thing is worth making, if you genuinely believe that your thing is good, then, sharing it with all your Facebook friends and, telling people about it, that's not being, unkind. That's actually saying, hey, I believe that this thing is worth your money. As long as you're not, you must buy this, despite what you think. It's more like, this is a thing that I've made. I think it's good. And if you think it's good as well, then maybe you'll want it. As you say, telling more people about it. But then we get to the question of what sorts of media do we want? Like, what's important? Because there's all sorts of different things. There's how-to plays, there's Instagram photos, there's quick, Twitter comments. Like, that might actually be more useful than a review from someone else, because maybe the Twitter comments from someone who's a big name might actually mean a lot. And you've got TikTok videos, all sorts of things. What kind of exposure do you ideally want when you look at the list that I've got at the bottom, and of course everything else besides?
I think that really depends on your audience. So it's knowing who you're trying to attract. Who do you think is going to be interested in this? And so Library Labyrinth, we're making it as a game which we think is going to appeal to probably 3 different markets. There are people who like books. There are people who are experienced sort of gamers and they want a quick game to play. Then there's people who are families with teenagers. Now, we've been talking to some teenagers and they've said, market it at the parents, don't market it at the teenagers, which I think was actually quite sensible of them to say that. And we probably would have gone down that rabbit hole had they not been quite clear. Actually, you don't want to market this at us, you want to market it at our parents. And it's that kind of, okay, who do you think is going to love what you've made the most? So what platforms appeal most to them, and what things do they want? Do they want to see lots of pictures of cats, for example? Because many people love seeing pictures of cats or videos of cats. Do you want to include that in it? Do you want to, do you want it something where those people are mainly going to be on Facebook, on Instagram? I mean, certainly when we're marketing to parents of teenagers, we're looking at Facebook rather than TikTok, because the teenagers are on TikTok, the parents are on Facebook, which is good for us because we're that generation too. We're all on Facebook. We're using Facebook and Twitter and a bit of Instagram rather than using TikTok, and none of us are really techie enough to be using other things like Telegraph very much. Let me pass on to Nikita, who's that way.
So I agree, it entirely depends on your audience. I think when we're asking whether we want reviews or comments or whatever else, I honestly and legitimately want a little bit of everything, right? Reviews are really great because especially just before and during a Kickstarter, people who are following the reviewers are likely to take a look. As we said before, you're building a relationship together as well. But also, most people, most people read a review when they're contemplating buying a game. So obviously during Kickstarter, that's deciding whether to back a Kickstarter or not. But 5 years down the line, someone might just see your game and go, oh, where's a review? Google it and find it. So that's always going to be there, and that's a great thing. And then there's, I think, my demographic, or I think there's enough varied people in there that they want the written word as well as videos. In the little bit of knowledge I have, there doesn't seem to be TikTok is very much a teenagery thing as far as I can see. I have an account on there and I haven't managed to do anything yet. But for my generation and the people I know who like games, there is a huge split between people who want to sit and watch a video and people who are like, no, just let me read so I can scan it and see what I want. So I think I want a bit of everything. And like you say, with like just a comment from an important or a respected person on Twitter is really, really helpful. I know that Janice has gotten me a backer before just by retweeting me, and someone was like, well, Janice likes it, of course. Like actually replied saying that. So all of those little interactions are really lovely as well. Although I saw someone on Twitter 2 days ago post going, why are people liking things that are 3 weeks old? And I was just like, oh, we really are. It really does have to be there and then. And it accentuates how important timing is, that someone was like completely shocked that someone would like something 3 years.
Wait, were they saying it like it's a bad thing? Like,
yeah. They're like really down on it. And I was just like, because I use Instagram and Twitter almost probably exactly the same amount, and Instagram is very like, oh yay, someone liked a photo from a year ago, that's great. Like, and then Twitter is very much like, how could you be liking something that's 3 weeks old? Which is crazy for me as well, because sometimes I won't get round to notifications for like a week, so I make a thread popular again and people start replying on that thread. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. You want a bit of everything. And some of those relationships are really important as well.
I'm still reeling from this information, because I've had threads where it's like, oh wow, this is a lots of comments that have got to a question. I don't have the energy. I could give them like a quick, couple of words reply to give some sort of validation, but if I've asked a deep question, I want to actually ponder this and give it some analysis. And I think it's a shame that, Twitter is all about these knee-jerk reactions, if you know what I mean. And quickly, just to catch up with chats, good morning, Alex. Time Roller says, the push to back for my Kickstarter purchases have been 1/3 playthrough, 1/3 playthrough, and 1/3 an IP that I already enjoyed. And so that's interesting to know. And of course, we had the comment from Jamie who says, yeah, if you are part of the board game community, why wouldn't they want you to keep talking about your thing? But it's also about your personal circles. Like on my Facebook, like most of my friends that I have on Facebook, they aren't people that I made friends with since I started making board games, if you know what I mean. And so it did take a thing of, well, these are all people that I know from school or from salsa dancing or from whatever. But yeah, I think it comes back to the thing of you have to make something that you have some pride in. Sorry, Janice.
No, I've not got a huge amount more to add, other than I think you definitely need a mix of them. And I think the importance of the previews and the videos and the playthroughs is kind of the validation and that third party looking at it. It's not just me shouting saying something's good, or my mate shouting and saying it's good. It's someone that it's not in their best interest to say something's good if it's not. And so it's that third party, endorsement's the wrong word, but sort of validation that this is their opinion. You've gone out to someone, they have given an honest opinion of it, and this is what it is. And different people have different opinions, which is why people follow different people, is that you might like person A over here and hate person B in terms of what you disagree with. Like, say, person B, you disagree with all of everything they always say, and person A, you might always agree. And so if person A likes it, then you're more likely to go with it. If person B likes it, it might be actually it's not a game for you. And so it kind of it gives you that external validation, and it also gives you the sort of better feeling of if you're going to like it or not based on your historic reading of what they do and how you relate to them. So it gives you that much better feeling. But so that's great. It gives you that validation. But as Ricky said, that's kind of like people that are already interested. And then the comments, it's on sort of Twitter and Facebook and those, that's about the raising awareness. It's like the buzz. It's how you get, I think, all those extra people who then might go and read those previews. It's just that's an awareness level. And the preview is, should I buy or not? Should I follow? Should I remain engaged or not? And so you really need the two of them, and they need to feed into each other. And again, it's this harmony between the two that you can't have one without the other.
I think, yeah, and yeah, Jamie, full of good point, yeah, I don't know if I think validation or just someone a bit more independent too is trusted. But for sure, we do want a bit of everything. And I think that it's good to have not only things about the game, but also things about ourselves, like interviews, going on appearances on, when you're going on Board Game Design Lab, it presumably shows that, okay, you know a wee bit about board game design. If you're going on Ludology, presumably it means you know something about making games. And any of these things, like, I do love chatting with people, which is probably shown off by the fact that I've spent we were probably over 1,000 hours in the past since COVID started chatting live. But genuinely, doing shows with people, showing, yes, this is the kind of person you are, and people thinking, yes, I would like to support this kind of person. And hey, if their tastes align this way, maybe this is a game for me. And I thought that Bez was only into really simple party games, and I don't want to go onto a show and suddenly talk about, deep, complex games just to say, hey, Rug Pool, actually, I'm totally different. I can go on and say, yes, actually, my one recommendation is going to be Doodles, which is a party game, but yes, my favorite game is Go, which apparently they did not expect at all, because apparently I don't talk about my favorite game enough. But understanding that people have these different dimensions, that we have this awareness, that we are aware of what goes on in the market, that also gives it a little bit of the validation. Alex says, the whole media promotion balance is a tricky thing. Some podcasts, for example, I feel the topic is a veil for getting to talk about their Kickstarter projects. And I have totally felt that, for example, someone who's maybe been working on a word game, and then they come on and they say, hey, let's talk about word games, making word games. And it's like, you've not even finished making your first word game. Are you really the best placed person to talk about this? Because that feels, I don't know. But then, of course, there's other shows that the only way to get on Think Like a Board Game Designer is if you're already really established. And so, frankly, yes, if you're Antoine Bowes at that point, it's like, do you even need to do any of this anyway? But let's move on, because I know that we have quite a few questions. So let's talk about reaching out to people. Let's talk about how we solicit previews, how we choose those people, and how we send them out. Jess, can you talk about your method? And obviously, you've also, it's not just about that, it's also about press releases, the Tabletop Gaming Magazine. How do you reach out to people? How do you choose people to get to connect with?
So I would say that I have two methods, neither of which work. The first one is scattergun, and it's just send something to everybody. The second one is bury your head in the sand. And these are basically, honestly, my methods, and neither of them are any good. And that's partly why I'm here, to say, don't do this, people. Don't do it like this. I mean, so for my first, the first game I kickstarted, then I did very little reviews within the board game world. In fact, I did no reviews within the board game world. It was something which accidentally picked up some board gamers, essentially. This was a board game which was about breaking into a military base. So for Disarm the Base, the reviews I did were that I got Campaign Against Arms Trade to review it for their newsletter, which, because it's the peace movement, it is a paper newsletter sent out to physical addresses and probably passed around many people, because the peace movement is the current peace movement is not very well versed in technology in the UK, that is something of an understatement. The other thing I did there was that I got the people who had done the original action upon which the game was based, so the people who had actually broken into the military base, to talk about it through their social media platforms. So that was mainly Twitter and Facebook, but there was a lot of work there where Sam and Dan, who were the ones who had most recently taken that type of direct action, didn't actually manage to get any of the Plowshares 4, who were the people who did it 21 years ago, to do that, unfortunately. But I got, Sam and Dan, who I knew, and this is why I was making the game, to talk about it and to say things. And that definitely brought in some people who wanted to buy the game. The other thing was that I reached out to groups who were very interested in that theme. So Greenham Common Women, various... the Peace Education Network, for example, went and took it to a meeting they had, where we looked at, the game, and we actually did a playthrough there. And that was the activity for the Peace Education Network meeting that time. So it was very much based upon the theme, and it was based upon the fact that my core audience for that was the peace activists networks and the movement there. What would have been really good would have been to get CND to do something. Didn't quite reach that, but Campaign Against Arms Trade is pretty big. They got given a Banksy a couple of years ago. Oh yes, I went to the Arms Fair Festival and did some exhibiting there, and that was really useful. So it was very much reaching into the community I knew and the networks I knew, and making sure that I had reached the people who were there with the theme. So it was really about recruiting more board gamers. In fact, that's what it was. It was like, you are people who know this subject, who I think would be really keen on board games. Here's a board game about disarming a military base. Come and play it. See what it's about. Perhaps they could then move on to other board games. I'm not sure whether we've gone a long way from your original question, so you might want to repeat the question for Nikita.
So, as is scrolling at the bottom of the page, how do we solicit, and let's make it not just previews and reviews, interactions with people? How do you choose who to engage with? How do you choose who to send review copies to?
So my answer was only theme. Sorry. Okay, Nikita can probably give a much better answer than I did.
Well, actually, I did pretty much the same thing as Jess with my first game. Because it was triathlon themed, I reached out to loads of triathlon clubs and people like that, and I didn't get quite as good an interaction as it sounds Jess did. But I mean, now working towards the Playful Pets Kickstarter, I decided I wanted to do as many review copies as I could. So there are actually 25 going out. And that was so that I could give the full game to reviewers I know well, and who I think that I feel like if they didn't even like the game, they would probably tell me and help me improve it rather than just slate it, which is something I really value in people who are going to be the first people to play it after playtesting, really. But in terms of how I reach out to them, I decided to so there's a couple of reviewers who are really nice and I really like them, and I chat to them on Twitter all the time. And as I said, my previous, so the middle campaign between these two games, I only had 5 review copies, and I was very like, oh, I will give one to you, and would you be willing to take one, and very like that. And now I'm a bit more like, I've got this game. It's family friendly. Do you like family friendly games? Because I want to match up reviewers with the kind of game that it is. So I when looking at someone entirely new and going, okay, well, you've got a nice following, people actually look at your blog, which is a good start. Do you like small games? Because this is a very light, small, fun family game. If they've got nothing like that, then I don't even, there's no point. They're probably not going to like it. And at the end of the day, I want to solicit nice things from people. If someone likes light family games and doesn't like my game, I've got no problem with that. But it makes sense for me to match up the kind of game it is with the kind of person it is, but also like thinking forward to my next game, which is much, much bigger and much more strategy and in depth. I've noted those people down and gone, they will probably like that game. I will contact them then. I've also seen some people who are really aggressive in saying, if I don't like your game, I will just send it back to you, and I don't like it, and blah, blah, blah. And I've kind of earmarked them as like, I have more confidence that you will like, based on the games that you have previously liked. I think you will like the next one better. So I'm not even going to approach you yet. And then, yeah, so my 25 reviewer pool for my next one is a mixture of people I just really like, and I want to give them something. They produce a lot of lovely content. I love the cat. And yeah, I want to be able to start building a relationship with them and helping them build a bigger following, so that in future we're both helping each other more as well. So it's a mixture of that, people that I already know are great reviewers. I already know they like my games because they've play tested them, and then reaching out to new people, because I didn't have 25 people that I definitely knew fit into those categories. So there's a bit this time of kind of like, I just hope it'll go well. But yeah, that's how I have reached out to people this time, and it's mostly been Instagram and Twitter messages, and a couple of emails. But that's how I've gone about reaching out to people this time.
I mean, 25 seems like a lot to me. Can I just do a really quick straw poll? For your last game, how many people did you send a review copy to or preview copy to? And also, second question, how many replies did you get? I'm going to shamefully admit, for my last game, Categorical, because it's the L deck, I could send out a previous version of the L deck, so it was quite easy to do that, but still, I think it was only 4 people maybe I sent it out to, like 3 of whom wrote something about it. How about you, Jess? If you can remember.
There was only one actual preview copy that was sent out, and then there were 3 meetings where it was a sort of a preview meeting, so I went along with it, and it was a meeting, but that probably reflects that that's more how that industry works rather than how the board game industry works. So I think you could probably count that as being 4.
Because you come very much from the activist side. Well,
yeah,
and
so 4.
Janice, how many did you send out for Pilfering Pandas?
So this time we sent out 18, about 60% UK, 40% US. And then when they're finished, they go through to someone else. So in Sillier Qs, we had a number of people just never heard back from again. But this time, everyone that's had a copy has produced some content or is in the process of producing content. So yeah, we find that for me, I'd rather produce, as you produce more copies, the cost per copy goes down quite significantly. So if you're doing just 5, you might as well almost be doing 10. And if you're doing 10, it's not actually that big a jump. So we did 20 because we kept 2 for ourselves. It's not that big a jump. But it means that if something gets lost in the post or damaged, that is not like, okay, it's like I don't have to worry because I've got other stuff out there. And also, as Nikita said, it's not just about getting, for me, it's not just about getting the name out. I want to support the little people that don't normally get Kickstarter preview copies, and for them, it's quite a special thing to get one. And I want to keep sending preview copies to the sort of, not like, I'm having to be slightly harsher now, not like the really tiny ones, but the smaller ones. They're not like the ones with 10,000 plus subscribers, the ones that might only have a sort of 1,000-2,000 followers or on the platforms. And I want them to be able to enjoy the Kickstarter preview bit as well. And I want to be able to send stuff to them. And it's like, because it's the cost. I mean, think about how much cost for advertising on Facebook and how much for acquisition it is, particularly on a low cost game. I'd rather actually send it out and give someone a chance to write a review. And I don't want to send someone that's not interested. I want to send someone interested, and hopefully we'll get something back. But actually, ultimately, in the end, I continue developing a relationship with a reviewer who, in a year's time, 2 years' time, who knows what they're going to be like, and who knows what we're going to be like. And it's, as I said before, it's that sort of partnership that we're signal boosting each other. So
I want to firstly thank you, Rights and Wrongs podcast, for following along. And yep, I hope you are enjoying the discussion. Stream Elements has reminded us all to have a wee bit of a jiggle and rickle if you so feel the need. And Alex asks, based on the fact that more people actually kind of got back to you, Janice, do you think that reviewers are maybe becoming a bit more professional?
I think it's actually more just, this is our third game and we've had more of a relationship with them over the time. You know which ones to send to, which ones not to send to. You have a better idea of the interest. And also, it's also, I think, about the hype you bring up beforehand, whether it's self-created or not, but just that sort of anticipation. The more anticipation there is, the more want there is to do it and the more want there is to get involved. So it's like, it's people, some of them I've asked way before, and they basically just don't respond to me. And then suddenly, once we're funded on Kickstarter, they get back to me and say, "Hey, it would really great if we could review your game." And it's so I think that some of it is a bit of that hype, but the ones that I think just want to jump on the bandwagon late, going back to the question, how do you choose? I'm less likely to choose, because if you didn't commit with me early on and want to do the game on its own merit, you're only wanting to do it because you want to jump on the bandwagon, then I'm less inclined. I'd rather have the person over there that perhaps has slightly less people, or send it to two that have less people each, but maybe combined have the same amount, because they are genuinely interested in the game and they're not in it just for coverage. They are interested in the game, they're interested in the games that we produce, and that they have positive interactions with them, rather than someone just wants to jump in the bandwagon. So that's kind of the other thing in terms of soliciting. But on the other hand, if someone does come in late and they're in the UK and they're on the smaller end, that doesn't feel like just jumping on the bandwagon. That feels more like it's about reach, because I haven't contacted, we don't have any previous thing. And if they're in the UK and I have a copy spare, I'm more likely to send it if I have one. In the US, it's working out so expensive to forward on copies. It's almost the same cost to send from the UK to the US than it is from US to US. And so it's a much... I feel really guilty saying to the smaller channels, no, sorry, it's just not financially feasible for me to send you this, because it's going to cost me in excess of 10 quid to actually send you this game from within the US, and my game's retailing for 17. And so you're going to have to get me a lot. And it's that's why I feel really guilty in the business side. You're going to have to get me a lot of conversions to justify me sending it to you. Whereas in the UK, it's 3 quid, and it's like, it feels much more, it's like it's worth a punt. And I prefer supporting local. I like to support people in the UK, because we're all in it together, and it's my home market, and I want to help people locally rather than. So that's the other way for choosing. I know it's kind of perhaps going off the original question, how many descend, but that's how I choose it. It's like, I want to support local. I want to support people that are generally interested and that we can work together going forward. And people that show a disinterest to start and then want to jump on, I'm less likely to do, unless they're a really big audience, or I really actually just have one free, or I can actually see that there's going to be some sort of a benefit for me as well. But yeah, so that's how I choose, is and that I like the stuff that they produce. So a couple of people that I did on Sensor Ghost and that I then did on this one is that they picked it up after the Kickstarter, and they did a preview or a playthrough or something, and I really liked it. And because I really liked it, I then sent it to them this time. So we had Play with E, which is a mum and daughter team that absolutely loved Assembly. And I absolutely loved it. And my daughters loved watching their review. And it's like, absolutely, let's get Pilfering Pandas over to. They haven't got a big following, but I love their videos. I think they're fantastic, and I think it was absolutely worth us sending them. And it's their first ever Kickstarter preview, and so it's like exciting for them. My daughters loved watching it, so it's like it was worth the money it's worth the investment for the emotional enjoyment of it all. So it's not all business, it's not all financial.
Mm-hmm.
There is that personal level as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Rights and Wrongs podcast, apparently it's cheaper to fly London to Boston than Boston to New York City, which does boggle the mind a little bit. But yeah, so much seems wrong with that, like from an ecological impact point of view. But setting that to the side, I mean, I absolutely, what you've said, Janice, I think epitomizes it very nicely. Like, have they made a stake to be involved? Like, were they someone who just is jumping on just for your success? But at the same time, with the bigger channel, I think there's, yeah, if you're reaching out to Tabletop Gaming Magazine or the Dice Tower, then obviously at that point it's like, yeah, I kind of understand you aren't able to cover everything, so then you end up sending press releases like Jess had a bit of success with. And I think, again, once you've sent it out, like, what are your obligations? Is that the end of your thing? Is it just to, hey, this is my game, you've agreed to review it, I get your address, I send you the copy? Is there any obligations on the publisher's part, Jess, that you can think of if you're sending something to a reviewer?
I think it depends what you've said your obligations are at the beginning. You know, it depends on the relationship you've established. Because if you've been really clear at the beginning, hey, we're just sending you this thing, you know, this is our game, please, yeah. If it's a thing where it's, please do consider it for your podcast or your channel or whatever, then that's one thing. But if it's something where you say, can you tell us what you think? What do you as the publisher want? And a lot of the things that we've done, and a lot of the things we're also planning to do, because our next game is about books, we're planning on having a fair number of these where it's not so much a reviewer, but it's going and having an event. It's going and visiting, well, when things are allowed, going and visiting a park or a bookshop garden or something, and, and playing the game there. Then there's a real obligation that, that you, the publisher, have to turn up and do the stuff and show them how to do it. So I think it really depends on what you said at the beginning, because there can be lots of different obligations, and as long as you are crystal clear at the start, then it should all be fine.
I agree with that. It depends on what you've agreed at the start. And then I think at the end, it's basically if you're feeling particularly generous because I know someone's gone out of their way, maybe you might do something, but that's not an obligation. It's what you agreed at the start, and then it's what you decide to do afterwards.
Yeah, so I've seen a few reviewers who are willing to do Kickstarter previews, but only if you send them the final published game after the Kickstarter. So there's things like that, and exactly the same as what Jess and Janice said. If you've agreed to do that, then that is your obligation and you should do that. I've had a couple where I've done something like that. I've got some agreements with that for like the future game Malum Hortus, because I think it's going to be really tough for me to produce good quality previews that are going to be as good as the final ones. So I'd be quite happily to send people the final ones if they've given me their time and effort to try and help get the word out. But yeah, I haven't really created any obligations for myself, and I think as the publisher you're very much saying whether you're deciding whether you've got a obligation later down the line, unless obviously someone says something. But I haven't had anyone say, if I do this for you, you better do this for me. But if they do, I'll take note and make sure I do it.
I guess the things that come to my mind are like, maybe retweeting or sharing the review once it has been done. I've heard some reviewers saying, oh yes, I made this review and it never got shared or anything, and obviously that's going to be a wee bit disappointing, especially if you've made the effort to tag the publisher and make them aware of the review once it comes out. I'm also thinking of, is there an obligation to send future stuff regardless of negativity shown upon one game, if you know what I mean? Because it's interesting there, Jamie Stegmaier has the principle that they will not watch or read your reviews, because the theory being that if they did watch or read your reviews, then the quality of your review, like what you said about their game, would influence whether they send you future things, and that feels like a bad bias. But to me, that feels like a missed opportunity for learning. It kind of seems like, do you care about this? And I don't know. At the same time, like if someone reviews the Wibble++ original deck where there were 5 games, admits that they've played 1.5 of them, and then still goes on to review all 5 of them, that feels a bit, you reviewed 3 games without playing them once. That's not cool, especially since one of those games it takes literally 2 minutes to play, and I'm less likely to give them. But then if someone reviewed In a Bind badly, yes, I'm less likely to send them In a Bind Junior, but is that a bad thing? I don't know. What do you think about that aspect of it? Jess, it looks like you've got something to say. Sorry.
So I think that's really interesting about the sharing. The sharing and the watching is what's come up to me. And I think, for sharing, I think actually that's something which isn't, that's definitely an assumption a lot of the time, but it's normally unspoken. And actually it would be nice if it was spoken more often, because as you were saying that, I suddenly thought there have been a couple of podcasts I've been on recently where the people have then said, oh yes, such and such is up. And I've gone, oh yeah, that's great, thanks. But I haven't automatically gone and shared it immediately. And it's not that I haven't wanted to, it's just that I haven't actually immediately thought of where they have shared it on Twitter and they have said, this is the thing, here it is, etc. Then I've gone, oh, yes, I'll retweet it. But if they've given me the link in if they have private messaged me the link, then I haven't automatically made the leap that I should share it. And now I'm suddenly thinking maybe that is what that message is supposed to do, and I just haven't clocked it. That is in fact quite likely. So I'm going to go back to my Twitter inbox after this and go and look at those and work out whether there's a message there that I just haven't been receiving. And I think I'll share all those. So that is actually a really good thing. That is perhaps an unspoken assumption that needs to be out there more. The second thing I wanted to say was that whether you watch or look at your reviews depends on, I think, 2 things. One, it depends on, this is the smaller thing. One, it depends on whether you've got enough time, which for most people, they probably will. I am feeling as though this month as May has just completely run away with me, and I am struggling to find enough time to sleep a lot of the time. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next week because it's half term, and I'm like, there's going to be almost no work done next week because I don't know what I'm going to do with the kids. So, there are circumstances where people are like, oh, yes, I'd love to watch that, but that's an hour long, video, or it's a, 30-minute podcast. Do I have 30 minutes to go and do that? With someone like Jamie Stegmaier, then in saying that he's not going to watch a review, he is acknowledging that his position is going to be very different from any of ours. That we're not going to scare a reviewer, potentially by watching it. But somebody who is a successful games designer, someone who has designed many games and has a certain pull within the game design world, they need to recognize that they've got that certain pull, and that reviewers, particularly smaller reviewers, might say, oh, this is a so-and-so game. well, I've got to say that it's good. I've got to say that it's nice. I've got to say that I enjoyed it. And, to say that suppose you're a small reviewer, to say that you didn't enjoy a game from a well-loved designer would potentially be opening you up to criticism. So having that designer then saying that they're not going to watch those reviews gives you a certain amount of leeway that you might not have otherwise. Or at least that's how it feels to me, and that's how I think it could be interpreted. And that, I think, is one of the things that someone like Jamie Stegmaier might be doing in saying that he's not going to watch the reviews. He's giving the reviewers, he's telling the reviewers that they can criticize him. Possibly. I don't know. I'm not him. I'm not the reviewers.
On the flip side, you could also say that he's not interested in them, and then there's no partnership, there's no relationship, there's no interest. And I would want someone to be completely honest in their review. Mine, positive, negative, regardless of that, because that's how I grow as a designer. And if they whitewash stuff, then I can't improve. I want them to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want them to tell me. But all I would appreciate is if it's all bad and ugly, is contact me before and just let me know, because maybe you played it wrong. And yes, that's my fault because I've not written the rules right. But that then doesn't reflect the game. So just let's have a chat, let's work it out, and then you go and print what you need to print. But let's just make sure we're on the same wavelength. And that's kind of, because again, it's about that kind of relationship, is that I want it to be the best it can be, and if you think it's not, I want to know that, and I want to know why that is, and I want to be able to have that two-way so I can improve. And it's not that I don't want to publish it, it's that I want to know so I can improve. And so it's important to me that people are honest. And I have had sort of conversations about things wrong, and I've sort of, as a result, I've gone on and I've improved it, I've changed stuff, I've made it better. And then they can sometimes they might hold the review for a week. They see what I've done, and I say, well, this is my initial impression, and these are the changes that have been committed or have been done, or these are the changes that are committed. We'll just have to wait to see if they are better or not, or whatever, anything else. But I want honest, I want truth, and I want discussion, and because I want to improve. And it might just be it's not their sort of game. And if it's not their sort of game, the question is then, from the reviewer perspective, if it's not your sort of game, is it something you should be publishing? Is the other question, because what value is it adding? Or can you do it more as a factual review, as in, this is not my kind of game up front, it will suit people who like this, it won't suit people who don't like that, rather than just saying, I hate this, it's rubbish, it's crap. So there are lots of ways of doing it, because on a small publisher, a negative review can have a significant negative impact on them. And I think most people want to improve. And so my thought there is, yes, I want to review them because I want to feel like I'm supporting them. I want to signal boost them and help get the word out on them. But I also want to improve because I want to see what they didn't like, because everyone is different and you have a much more critical eye of review because they're looking at it a different way. And I want to take that, and particularly when I still can, and put that in and improve it. And if I can't, I want to take that and improve it in my next game. So yeah, I want that well balanced. I want that well rounded. But I also want that dialogue, because it's going to be useful for both of us in the long run. Because if you're open and honest with me, I'm absolutely going to send you in the next game as well, because I benefit. And even if it's not even a completely positive one, if I think it's going to be your sort of game, I've got benefit out of that relationship either way. And so yeah, I want open and honest. I want those frank discussions. I want the pros and the cons. And if it's not your sort of game, then just say so, because there's no benefit in either one. Just saying I hate this game because it's not my sort of game. So yeah, I also would like viewers to have the honesty to hand up and say, hey, I thought I was interested in it. I'm not. I'm going to pass on this one. What do you want me to do with the game?
I mean, it's okay if you don't have anything to add at this point, Nikita.
I actually had a question. So it was initially about whether we should, whether our obligations are to kind of share and retweet and things like that. And I wonder, whether we're all happy. I've had a bad review that I purposely didn't retweet. Why would I?
Yeah, this is the interesting thing. So the review that I talked about where, and I can't remember when it was, I could probably find out, but yeah, it would have been probably 2017. And I'm still annoyed about it, frankly, I'm not going to lie. And part of me, because I keep seeing the reviewer in certain circles, because that's the nature of the board gaming world, I do wonder, whether I should say, hey, I just want to clear the air. I have this kind of slight disgruntled nature, and like the fact that they said, oh, Wibbles seems like a fine game, but don't expect anything from any of the other games. And that annoyed me because you only played half of one of the others. You admitted you played one round of Alphabetical, and that game becomes more interesting. There's a little bit, and like the other 3 games you didn't even try, and you wrote 2 paragraphs about how some party games are badly developed. And that kind of implied, anyway, I did share that in my own LDEC, or it was called back then, Wibble++ Facebook group. And I had that was actually the most commented upon thing, where a whole bunch of people said, yes, this reviewer totally doesn't get it. And kind of actually reading that and then supporting me, which was interesting. And I was talking to actually, if you know Modiphius, who did Achtung Cthulhu and a whole bunch of role-playing games, and what's that, Thunderbirds, the Matt Leacock cooperative game. One of the Matt Leacock cooperative games, I should say, given that there's at least 7 that I can think of right now. Anyway, so Panny was saying how, yes, even negative reviews, I would still put it up for my website because, frankly, I don't have that many things, and even that shows that someone's done it. But you don't. The way I would approach it personally is I would share everything at least once somewhere, but then whether you share it again a second time kind of highlights it. And I think down the line I'm going to start, going through, with the LDEC Twitter, maybe every Friday I say, hey, here's the reviewer who reviewed it back in the day, even if it was 4 years ago, here's what they thought. Those things are clearly still going to apply to this game, and Wibble is still a game you can play with any of the LDECs. Hey, you might want to check it out. But I'm definitely not going to kind of share the one review that I'm kind of alluding to. Well, I don't know, it's a difficult one, that thing of, this whole thing of negativity, it brings me to my next thing. Like, do publishers really want honesty? What is the value in critical coverage?
Validation of honest reviews, that they actually are honest and they are true. So you don't want, I think, in every review you want probably at least one critical thing mentioned. Otherwise, it's just a puff piece. And if it's just a puff piece, why should anyone believe it? You want what they didn't like, because there's going to be something probably in every game that someone doesn't like, just because it conflicts with what they like doing. So it's that validation and honesty that it's not just your mate writing something; it's someone independent writing it.
So I agree entirely. So what I was alluding to before was a time where someone was just mean. But I like myself as well, when I am deciding whether to buy something or not. I really love the reviews where they'll sum up with pros and cons. And everything has a con to some degree, and everything has hopefully a pro to some degree. But yeah, I want honesty, and if I want constructive criticism, and I have been on the receiving end of just criticism before. But yeah, I definitely want honest reviews, because as well, anyone reading it can tell, like you say, like a puff piece, you can tell if it's just a puff piece. It's one of the reasons that people keep asking me to do reviews, and I say no, I do features, and I will play games and I will feature them on my Instagram, and I will say what I liked and didn't like about it, but I won't do a full review, because I don't feel like I have the experience to do that. But at the same time, I've built up a lot of nice people on Instagram and such, and so people.
I mean, if you're saying something good and something bad, isn't that a review?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't want, if someone's sending me a free copy of something, I state in advance and I let them know that you know, you're going to get like 2 or 3 sentences from me. It's not a blog article, it's not a video, and I know that that's their time and effort and money that they're putting towards sending me a copy. So I kind of have like a little disclaimery type thing that I say to people when they suggest that they might want to send me a copy. So I don't tout myself as a reviewer. I say I do features, because as well, especially indie games, I want to feature them. I love the indie gaming community. I've built this whole thing, and 3/4 of this screen are in the Indie Tabletop newsletter. So yeah, I want to do what I can to help and support people as well. And I will be honest as well. And if I have messaged them and said, I know you've printed this, but in future, if you do another print run, you might want to consider this. And it's not a criticism that anyone buying the game needs to know. So I'm not going to put it out into the ether, but I will just let them know that there's possibly an improvement that could be made somewhere. And there's no point pointing that out to someone who's not even going to notice. But yeah, so I try and be as honest as I can. I want people to be honest back to me.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think a publisher really needs, they need something to be accurate. So it doesn't, they need it to be something which truly reflects the game. So if it's critical, because obviously games are they're a subjective experience. It's you playing a game, it's your feelings, and you as a group or you as an individual, but it's how this group played the game. It's how that reviewer, how they played it, how they had an interaction with it. So they're always going to be telling you about their experience, what they thought of it, etc. Which is why people are buying it, because they want a personal experience. So clearly, as a publisher, you don't want something which is going to be critical, because you want your game to be successful. But that's why you make it the best game you can. That's why you have all the playtesting. So you want the playtesters to be super critical, So yeah, Library Labyrinth. First time I took it to the virtual playtesting group, it was like, oh, okay, right, this is not nearly as done as it could be. Right, okay. It's slightly embarrassing. But that's the thing. You want the playtesters to be saying, yeah, you need to do this and this and this, or that.
But there's a difference between playtesting and reviewing.
Exactly. So you need to have done all of that, before you get to the reviews. And that's why you want the that's why if you've done your work, the reviews shouldn't be terribly critical about the game in that way. The reviews shouldn't be saying the game is broken, because if they're saying the game is broken, then either there's been some horrible miscommunication, versus there's something's gone wrong if they're saying the game is broken. But they should be accurate. And if that is saying, look, actually, this thing doesn't work for me, but I really love this, this, and this. There are some games that I've seen, for example, where I've been thinking, wow, that mechanic is absolutely brilliant. I love the mechanic. I love the thing. The artwork turns me off. And that's fine. You can say that to something. And I think it's quite good for somebody to say that, because then other people can look at it and say, okay, right, they have accurately portrayed this mechanic. They've said that actually they really don't like the trick-taking aspect or the bidding aspect of it. But I like trick-taking games, or I like bidding games, or I like social deduction games, or whatever, so therefore I'm going to like it. So there is little value in critical coverage that is critical for the sake of being critical. There's little value in critical coverage that is critical because you as a publisher have not done your playtesting or something. But there is really great value when coverage has a little bit of criticism, because it is accurate criticism, because it's reflecting the subjective experience that that reviewer and that player had with that game, because other people will be able to make their own judgments much more accurately based on that.
That makes a lot of sense. And Jamie says, I think retweeting a bad review does bring integrity to your own brand, and it always impresses me. And yeah, thank you very much for the kind comment, Super Curly One. And I think I do agree with you that we do want negativity, both to show it's not a puff piece, to inform our own future printings. I would slightly disagree, Jess, but that there's no value in negativity when it's down to insufficient playtesting. But I think that maybe, yeah, it's something that could have been avoided if you did your work right as a publisher. But let's be honest, we aren't always perfect. And things are going to be like, oh yeah, actually, that would be better. And sometimes that does then help inform future printings, because let's be honest, when we do second edition down the line, maybe we just do a straight up preprint of the first edition, but at some point, if the game keeps selling, we might come to a place where, okay, we stop. Now, let's talk about a reviewer's obligations that we see. If you send out a review copy, are there situations where you send out a review copy kind of on the understanding that it might be used, it might not be used? I have given out review copies to Tabletop Gaming Magazine, and they've said to me clearly, this might be used, it might not be. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but you know, on the off chance that it is, it still feels worth my time and money to give them a review copy. But yeah, Janice, what do you see as the reviewer's obligations to you?
It depends what you've agreed exactly in the reverse one. So I think if that person has agreed to do it, then they should. I guess so if it's going to be late and life happens in the way, I think it's about just communicating and talking, because yes, you've got like with a Kickstarter, you want stuff then, but you know what? You're going to probably, when you're doing a retail release potentially, or when you've got all your games and you're sending it out to backers, that's actually an equally valid time to get it. And it's like just talk to each other about when would be the time. If you've agreed a certain date, then go back and just talk. So I think the obligation actually is to communicate. That's the key obligation. And if you're not going to be able to do it, be upfront, say about it, and work out what to do next. I'd rather someone's open, honest, and talkative to me, and to get something done.
It's a great take, just the communication and the clarity. Anything else to add?
So I agree entirely. I've not yet put myself in a position where I've worked with a reviewer who said I may or may not. I've pretty much approached all of my reviewers saying, do you have time between this date and this date to play this game and review this game? And would you like the game? I have had someone review late, and they've been open and honest about it, and they've said, I'm really sorry, I double booked you. I won't be able to do it until midway through the Kickstarter. And I was like, fine, we'll make that into a big deal then. We'll be like, midway through the Kickstarter, this person's doing a live thing about it. Let's make that a big deal. So yeah, I think so long as everyone's open and honest. I've not yet, as I say, Mini Memory Mischief, I only gave out 5 review copies. They were 5 people I had a nice chat with, felt quite good with. These 25 copies, I get the feeling, just statistically, someone's probably not going to get back to me, or there'll be some late ones. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, communication is key, and I've never put myself in, or I've never felt like I have the time and energy to make a game that might not actually end up with a review. So for now, I've always said, will you review this game? And if they've said, I've had someone say, send me the rule book first, and I'll see if it's the kind of game that I would like, and that's fine. But if it's send me the game first, then I'll play the game, then I'll decide whether I review it or not. I haven't put myself in that situation yet. I might down the line. As I said, there's a reviewer that I really want to work with, but they're very overly critical, so that might happen in the future. But for now, not.
Yeah, just to say that both of those seem, highly sensible. Being clear is the ultimate one, because life does get in the way sometimes. I know that I've got at least a couple of things I said I'd do over the last month and I have completely not done them. But yeah, it's that kind of actually, what's going on. Let's just be clear about it. So sorry to everybody I said I'd do things on, and I think, Nikita, you are one of them.
Time Roller mentions that lots of reviewers say if they didn't enjoy the game, they won't put in the time and work to film a review, which I think Janice just puts it perfectly, that the obligations are whatever you agree to, and the key obligation is to communicate as best as you can. And of course, certainly life can get in the way. So if I'm going to review this in a few months, and then you say, okay, things have turned up, but then maybe things turn up in a manner that you're racing off to hospital, and there's all sorts of things, and you might not even be in a headspace where you can communicate out to everyone. And sometimes that happens, and you have dropped the ball. Like I say this as a reviewer who has done this at some points in the past, and it is difficult, but fundamentally I think communication is the key. Now, before you go, Nikita, I know that you have to skedaddle in like 2 or 3 minutes, so I felt that maybe you could answer this question, and then we'll say goodbye to you, and then we'll kind of do all the regular close-up sections with myself, Janice, and Jess, if that's okay with everyone. So, Nikita, how would you advise making your games more likely to be covered? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Here's where I hope to drill into your mind and get all the best tips.
I think actually for me, one of the things that really works is a great deal of enthusiasm. I try and be as open and honest with people as possible. I left reviews for my next Kickstarter later than I would like, so I've been contacting people saying, I know it's short on time, but do you have time between mid-June and mid-July to do this? And people have said no, but keep me in line for future. And I've been really honest that I would just want to marry people up with the kind of games they like. And I've had someone say, no, I really like heavy games, and this isn't a heavy game. It's not going to work for me. And they've sent me to other reviewers and said, I think these 2 people would like it. And that's great. But yeah, for me, I think obviously it being a great game and it looking nice, but honestly, most of the reviewers who've agreed to review it haven't seen it and haven't had more than my description of it. And my description of it is very it's tons of fun. You do this, you do that. Dogs are running around, cats are running around. It's tons of fun. So I think for me, it's a great deal of enthusiasm about my game that gets it to a reviewer. Whether they then cover it once they receive it is another thing.
And yeah, I think that's a really good thing. Not only that enthusiasm, but actually taking the time to learn what they really enjoy. But Nikita, thank you very much for being here. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful one. And if people want to check you out, then where do you most like to be found?
Twitter's best if people want to message me and chat to me. I'm good with Twitter. Otherwise, any of those links. Facebook's the worst because it doesn't tell me when I have messages. Anyone else? But thank you so much for having me. And it's really nice to finally get to talk to Jess and Janice properly. And I can't wait to chat to you all again. And now I'm going to go. Bye.
Bye 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 Nikita. Bye 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 bye. We'll see you later. And cheers, Nikita, says Alex. So, yes, same question to Janice. How can we make our games more likely to be covered? What works for you? Give us your tips.
I think one of them is contact people well in advance. Even if you're not ready to send it, let them know so that they can book you into their schedule. That's a mistake I've made sometimes, and I think that's probably why I got a reduced coverage in sense ago, so it's a bit too last minute. But yeah, I think even if you're not ready, reach out with what you got and say you're interested, so you can get your yeses and nos hopefully earlier, and let it get scheduled in. And I think the other one is just like teasing artwork on social media while you're developing. Don't just sort of bang, here's my game, will you cover it? You should be, I think, adding something to the community as well. People like to see things evolve, and if you're just bang, here's my game, will you do something for me? It feels very much like you haven't contributed yet, and so it's about contributing to the community, whether that's sharing what you're doing with your game or just sharing in general or joining in. Yeah, I think sort of contributing in whatever way you can in the lead up, and if you can in between as well, is a very good way to get it. And then the other one is just about, I think, maintaining relationships between each game, or even in between. So if other people are covering it, and you like what I said earlier, like what they do, maintaining that and taking it forward. So I think it's that sort of personal. It's not right because it's not a personal relationship, professional relationship, or whatever. It's just that there is a communication channel between you and someone else, and maintaining that, and it not being necessarily just, will you go and do this for me? Because if it's just, will you go and do this for me, it's very much a you just taking, and I think there's got to be a give in it. And if that give is boosting some of the other reviews that they do by retweeting them or commenting on them, then you're giving something back, whether it's asking how they are because you've not seen them around for the past 2 months and just doing a check-in. Whatever it is, it shouldn't just be take, it should be give, in either public or private. And I think that's kind of, that's the top thing. But it's really hard to do it across multiple platforms. If you've got Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and then Facebook, and you've got, like, I don't know, 10 different groups, it's really, really hard to do that across all. So I learned quite early, you kind of have to pick and choose where you are. So my preference is Twitter, for the simple reason it's short, sharp communication. I can just burst something out very quickly and get involved very, very quickly. Instagram, I don't get. It requires pretty pictures and stuff, which requires lots of time. And with 2 young kids, there isn't lots of time. And Facebook, I've sort of just picked and chosen like 1 or 2 groups that I can actually add some value to, and then the rest of them, it feels a bit more like a take. But I do try to do stuff, whether it's just a post like or an occasional comment and that sort of thing. But I think it's about focus is the other thing. Pick and choose where you're going to spend your time, because the more you build up your contributions and credibility and community in that area, the more you will get out, and then hopefully they will take it elsewhere. Yeah, so those are my tips.
Thank you very much.
So you know how earlier I said that one of our approaches was the burying your head in the sand approach? Well, guess what we've been doing? So the thing about contacting people ahead of time, we've not been particularly good about that, particularly for actual reviewers. So we've been doing a round of podcasts, and that's been really interesting, you know, coming and talking to people. You know, that's not just been me, it's been me and Mill, and sometimes some of the other members of the team have been there as well. And that's been actually fascinating, you know, to go and do the podcasts. And I think in the last month, I've probably done 6 different podcasts I've been on. You know, so I feel that that's really, you know, that's been fun, and that's been really connecting with people on those levels, and that's great. The thing about social media and making sure that we're keeping on, you know, showing people what we're doing. we've been fairly good at that. And I think I would highlight that as well and say, yes, you know, you've got to take people on the journey. So you've got to start at the beginning and be like, hey, we've got this idea. Here's draft 1, here's draft 2, here's draft 3. And, you know, we might be at draft 27 or something by now, but that's okay. You know, that's sort of showing them how it's developing, how the idea is progressing, you know, and that's something which I quite enjoy doing. We've got newsletters, and I've got to get one out before the end of the month because they've been monthly so far, and they've varied in where they are in the month. I think it started out at, like, you know, the beginning of March. You know, I had one at the beginning of March, and then it was mid-April, and now it might be the 31st of May. So I've got to actually be better at sending those newsletters
You're still
out.
doing, you know, a decent job. Like, if you can stick to one a month, that's still pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah.
I aim for once a month, but it's more like, you know, every 3 months for me, to be honest.
Yeah, but it is one of those things where I think it's the key to this is probably getting all of these things relatively balanced. You know, so saying, okay, we're doing quite well in the social media, you know, talking to people. We're doing quite well in the, you know, going out and talking to people, talking to people in real life. We're doing quite well at whatever. Right now, I feel like we're doing more than quite well, fairly well, very well in a few of them, and very badly in others. And so I'm sort of going, we need to make this more even. So the things that I've sort of taken away from this are, oh, yes, I've really got to go and actually contact those reviewers, because we contacted them back in March to say, hey, you know, we're doing this thing later. And they said, oh, yes, send us some more stuff when you're more ready. And it's probably the time to do that. And have we followed up? No. So again, that's a don't be like us rather than a do be like us message.
It's difficult because there's always the desire to be perfect. And the truth is, no one can be perfect. I mean, Janice earlier on was talking about, choosing your targets. If you, especially, I mean, I don't know how things have changed since you got Antoinette on board. Maybe we could have a chat in my 5th season.
Well, she brings consistency, which I don't, because I only want to say something when I've got something to say, and I don't want to have to wait till next Tuesday at 12 o'clock because that's the best time to do it. I want to say it now because I'm excited now. So Antoinette brings consistency and regularity there. Every week there's going to be some content. It's not going to be at 10 o'clock at night on Tuesday and then, 8 o'clock at morning 3 weeks later. So she brings that consistency and brings it out there, which has really helped, I think, and is what's needed. And it's just something that I don't like doing, and other people do like doing that. They like creating content, and you see, it's just not me. I only want to say something when I've got something to say. So she's been a great help. She's been the saviour that I don't have to worry that I've got to put something out this week, which stresses me out because I hate it. It's like, I haven't got anything to say. Why would I want to put something out when I haven't got anything to say? But Antoinette always I've given her loads of stuff and she can create something to say. And she's good at that, and she's good at the consistency, and she's good at at waiting, whereas I'm not. I'm useless at it. So she's my consistency, which is what I need to make my random stuff actually be seen and heard.
Slightly ironically, after what Nikita said about the enthusiasm, and I think that enthusiasm is a great thing, but it has to be curbed sometimes. It's like, maybe don't say this thing at 1 a.m. And what I've started doing is I've written tweets, but then just use the in Twitter scheduling thing, so that I'll write it because I'm super excited about it, but then it'll be scheduled for a different time. And
I don't want to talk about it then. I want to talk about it now.
Yeah, I understand.
So
And this is why we need to kind of curb our enthusiasm somehow, as much as that seems like it's going against the grain. You know, like, it's the Peter Molyneux thing. Honestly, are you too familiar with Peter Molyneux? So Peter Molyneux, very well known in, I feel like there should be an exclamation mark Molyneux thing in the Twitter, because I'm probably going to speak about them repeatedly. But Molyneux made Fable, made Syndicate, made Dungeon Keeper, made Populous, if you know any of those games. And they are best known for saying things about their games which maybe don't come true, if you know what I mean. So, for example, with Fable, they're like, oh, in this game, you're going to be able to plant an apple, and then the apple will grow into a tree. And then, you know, because the game lasts over many years, you'll eventually be able to go and see this tree. And yeah, Time Roller knows what I'm talking about. Yes, Peter Molyneux is best known for saying things that don't come true. And then eventually, at a certain point, Peter Molyneux had an interview where someone said, Peter, are you a pathological liar? That was the first question in the interview. And it carried on in a similar vein where they basically said, look, you've talked about all these things for your latest game. None of them have ever come true. And if you look at it on Steam, it's still on, like, you know, the pre-alpha thing, and none of the things that they said in the Kickstarter. Oh, yeah, the tree conversion. But the point is that Peter's basically had to remove themselves from the media and said, I'm not going to talk about games anymore until they are finished. And in a sense, like, board games are still in this space where people understand that when we talk about things, those are kind of aspirations. They may come to pass, they might not come to pass. I talk all the time about how, you know, my dream is to have like all these beautiful decks and like have, you know, things going into schools and all these things. But hopefully people understand that I might be able to do it, I might not be able to do it. But this is my aspiration. But you have to couch things in that reality. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's how likely the plan is, you know, because actually somebody saying this will happen, it's definitely going to happen. You know, when they have design control, that's quite different to someone saying, you know, I'd really love it if this, and I want to aim towards this, and this is my dream. You know, that's quite different language. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to couch it in that. And most people, I think, do understand when it's clear. Maybe it's about coming back to the, you know, to the being clear. As long as you're clear about where you are at the moment and how you might need to get there, but I think it's all fine, you know, because people do have dreams to get all of their games into schools and things, and it's like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. That's got quite a different feeling from, we have a 10-point plan and it's doing this and it's doing that, and it's definitely all costed. Because a lot of these things, you know, you come back and you go, actually, that's going to cost too much. We're not going to be able to do that after all.
Anyway, I think this has been a really, really fantastic chat. Frankie's now on my lap and has started purring. Don't know if you can. I've started training Frankie this morning that if she wants pets, she has to be on my lap, and if she actually steps on the keyboard, then she gets a smack, which feels really bad and almost like animal cruelty, but, you know, it's more like a, you know, she's okay. She still loves the
I've learned hissing is much more effective with our kitten. She doesn't listen to no or anything other than if you hiss and growl at her, and then she behaves herself. So I've been perfecting my hiss over the past 12 months because it's the only thing she listens to.
Thank you for the tip. I want to firstly, do a recap, because we have talked about quite a bit, some of which I've taken notes of. We sang happy birthday. We talked about COVID jabs and working together, maybe Nikita and Janice meeting up at some point in the not too distant future. And we talked about, well, I had some tech troubles. We talked about how we want everything. We want every kind of coverage. Ideally, it's all good, like interviews, you know, quick comments. And I think this is a thing that carried on, you know, almost through my entire show. Jess, you've made this really clear in my mind: clarity and then kindness and fairness. And I think even in romantic relationships or friendships, I think you need to have that clarity first most, because how can you have true kindness and consideration if you don't know what the other person appreciates? Anyway, obviously the media person should say what they're going to do. We talked about giving content in your interviews, not just promoting yourself. We talked about scattershots is bad, burying your heads in the sand is bad. Do it in a wee bit more of a focused way. Nikita and Janice, you seem to be doing great jobs. Thinking about, do these people like our games? Did they commit earlier? Does their audience match? Do they have a big enough audience? Because even though you talked about going with smaller reviewers, Janice, you talked about people who still have, 1,000 or 2,000 followers, which is nothing to be sniffed at. We talked about, publishers probably should generally share the reviews. There might be some negative ones, and there might be, one in 100 or something that it's like, wow, that was weird. But Jamie mentions that sharing negative reviews does kind of bring a little bit of trust. We talked about wanting negativity to show that it's not just a puff piece, to inform our future printings, but again, it needs to be informed. We talked about watching reviews, and we skirted around that topic. We could have talked about it for a few more minutes, because there is an interesting discussion to be had about our personal ego and everything else that might come into that. We talked about ultimately, the obligations are whatever was agreed, the key obligation being to communicate, and the tips from Nikita: enthusiasm, learning about people's tastes, and from everyone else, do things well in advance, tease the artwork, engage with folks, maintain and build these relationships and communication channels, and have monthly things like your newsletter. Try to do things on some sort of schedule. Is there anything else that you would like to say at this point to wrap up the topic, Janice?
Not I can think of. I think you covered everything. I think the only thing maybe is that it's a partnership. I think that for me that's the biggest thing. It's a partnership, and we should, where possible, be helping each other. The helping doesn't mean giving a puff piece. It means giving an honest piece, which gives you something that you can use and point to. Yeah, it's informed, which people can then use to make a decision based on it. So we're helping each other in our own ways, not as friends, but maybe as friends in the background, but as professionals is the main thing. It's two professional people that are helping each other achieve their passion.
Yeah, it's about getting the word out. It's about talking to people. It's about getting other people to know about what you're doing, because the game that you're making relies on somebody else knowing about it in order to want to play it. So it's about spreading the awareness of it, which might feel weird, and I think some of it is to do with the fact that we come from one end and we're talking a different language. When you're talking about content creation and things, it's like these are not terms that make a huge amount of sense to me. I'm learning all of the media terms. So I think sometimes it's about going back to it and saying, hang on, what are we actually doing? We have a thing we think is nice. We like this thing. It is a good thing. We would like other people to know more about this thing. How can we do that? So sometimes it really benefits my way of looking at it, at least, to go back to the roots of what it is we're actually trying to do. And then from there, you can build on, okay, what sort of person will like this thing I'm making? How am I going to reach the type of person who will like it? How is this all going to work? But yeah, going back to the real roots does help me, at least.
And being open to learning from each other and being able to take that feedback and guidance from each other. I think that, what I've learned and gained a deeper understanding of over the past year is definitely the importance of human connections in working together, in whether it's for a single project or whether it's for, symbiotic relationships, like ideally a publisher media relationship should be. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone, obviously everyone who's been on here, Janice and Jess and Nikita, who's now gone, but also everyone who's been watching. Thank you so much. And let me quickly ask, if you want to find me, first of all, then Stuff by Bez everywhere and bigcartel.com and all the different places. But yeah, the thing that I'm trying to promote just now is twitter.com/ELLdeck, where there's games going on 3 times a week, and Layla and Chris do most of the responding, but I really enjoy watching everyone's answers to everything. So please go off and check that out. And thank you very much, Jamie. So yes, Janice, where do you most like to be found?
The best place to find me is on Twitter under the Dragon account. You will get me on the Rain Games, but if you want to be guaranteed to talk to me, then twitter.com/Dragon. The other ones, you probably get me, but you might not get me straight away. It might be days, weeks, or months later that I notice that you've sent something.
Oh, is Antoinette not kind of running all your Red Games media accounts now?
She leaves the messages to me, and on Facebook, the ones that go to the Red Games account, they don't always pop up if you do it on the Red Games on Facebook and Instagram. They pop up, but I have this aversion to Instagram for some reason. I don't know why. If you contact me on Instagram and say, "Can you go and contact me on Twitter, please?" Just go over there, because I don't check Instagram, so I'll get a pop up, but I don't actively check it.
That is fair.
Yeah, and the Rain Games one, you might get Antoinette, or you might get me. So it will depend on what the question is.
Jess, where do you most like to be found?
Twitter is probably best for me as well, because Twitter, I'm guaranteed to actually see it at the right time. So yeah, when you actually want me, go to the Descent Games one on Twitter, more likely to see that. But if you want to look at some of the stuff that's going on, then basically the 3 websites for the 3 things I've got, so Disarm the Base was my first Kickstarter, Library Labyrinth is the one currently going on, it's exciting, yay, come and check it out, etc. But descentgames.com, that's where I'm doing things like the Games Jam that's going on at the moment, but also general other stuff. Should you want to know a lot about elections, for example, that's where you go. Should you want to know about, media for different political parties, or the ins and outs of the Lobbying Act, and possibly coming soon, the Police Crime Courts and Sentencing Bill, go there as well. But I think that's probably quite
very
a niche
UK-centric.
It's so the company has been set up as a company which is limited by guarantee. So it's a non-for-profit company, but it does 2 things, and it's called so it does campaigns and it does games, where campaigns are specifically political stuff, so it's bringing together something. So should you be one of these people who thinks that politics does not belong in games, then it's probably not the right website for you.
Very much agreed. And for everyone out there, of course, this is, I'm actually going to give a wee comment. So Kitty Cataclysm and also Categorical, both of them, I said, Kitty Cataclysm, reasons to not back Kitty Cataclysm. It was right there up at the top. And one of them was like, maybe this game's a bit too long for you. If you like games that last less than 30 seconds, this game is just too long. Conversely, if you want games that last more than 12 minutes, then this game is also a bit too short. And yeah, like things like, yeah, it's very take that-y. Maybe you don't like take that. And part of it is, but yeah, I've been thinking that maybe this is a bad way to market myself. I know that there was like a bit of tongue-in-cheek nature about it, but genuinely for categorical, when I have reasons not to play categorical, and I'm really trying to think of, let's tell people, I think I should just relabel that to what is categorical and say, yes, there's lots of shouting, there's lots of manicness, and yeah, but yeah, so basically, yes, sure, if you don't like politics in your games, it's not for you, but that's just a kind of slightly self-deprecating way of saying this is all about politics in games because politics are in games no matter what.
Bez, I was a civil servant. I am the epitome of self-deprecating. It's what we do. We get special training.
Okay, so, and thank you for all the lovely emojis, Time Roller. And it is, of course, over to you. What are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. So what are you up to after this thing? Whether it's frivolous, serious, or whatever, let me know. Yes, who is ready to say what you're up to after this show?
We're going out!
Yay!
We've gone and got the community car because we don't own a car because we live right in the middle of Reading, and you know we were both commuting into London for a while, so no car. Yeah, but we've gone and got the community car. We're going up to a relative's house. We're going to sit outside in the garden. There are chickens. There are goats. It'll be lovely. Yay!
That sounds fantastic.
I'm not doing anything near as fun. I've just got to get the Facebook ads working. I've been putting it off, so yeah, I think it's about time I get them working and going and just send them out again. Why is this taking?
And that's Facebook ads for your pilfering pandas.
Yeah, I wanted to wait until it was funded, and then I just got distracted. Anything was better than doing Facebook ads. But no, today I'm going to get them sorted. So that's my mission today, and to sit outside and enjoy the sun with lunch and dinner and coffee time and any other excuse I can to get out there.
That sounds lovely. Time Roller also gets to play games with people in person today. That does sound fantastic. Yeah, any plans for which particular games you're playing? Let us know. I am... it's like I do so many streams that check out the calendar because that tells you what I'm doing for at least generally a couple of hours of each day. And so later on today, in about 4 hours, I will be back on the same location with YouTube or Twitch, and I will be playing Potion Explosion on Board Game Arena for the first time. I've played it on the Steam adaptation. I was not very impressed with that app, to be honest. It seemed perfectly serviceable. It seems like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 like adaptation, but I was a little bit disappointed given that it's got Asmodee's budget. But hey ho. Yeah, basically it's perfectly fine. The user interface, it doesn't. You can't access the rules if you're in the middle of playing a game, which is not great. So you've got to minimize that and open up a new window when you're doing the tutorial. But you know, it works fine. It works fine. The animations are nice. The graphics are lovely, and there's fine music. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so I am going to be playing that on Board Game Arena with Panic later today, and on Twitter, 2/3 of people think I'll lose. Let me know what you think, and I think I'll lose as well, to be honest. But I'm not very good at it, and Panic is okay. I've got a friend in hospital who will hopefully be going back home today, so I will kind of, that's a good thing that might happen, fingers crossed, and I will be doing some writing and also probably some planning for episode 400, which is in 11 days, Thursday, 10th of June. It's going to be a big epic thing. I will tell you all more details tomorrow, but I can say it will be 25 hours long, and it will be from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. UK time. There will be scheduled times where I'm using the mobile phone and going and cooking and doing physical exercise because, to keep myself healthy. And I do want to see if I can schedule some time for someone to take over, maybe.
I was going to say, what's the sleep time going to be? Is there going to be any sleep time?
No, there isn't going to be any sleep time.
Well, you and Frankie could have a cat nap in front of the camera. Curl up together and just snooze. And everyone can just watch the cat.
There's Cam. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Someone apparently did, I looked up a while ago, nearly half a year ago, approximately, and said, oh, what is the longest stream ever? Apparently someone did a month-long thing, the longest stream for just one person to do it was someone basically Big Brother style. You can even see them when they're sleeping for an entire month.
Wow. That's quite impressive. That is very impressive, in fact. I don't think I'd like that.
I think they did allow themselves to go off camera when they were using the loo or getting naked for the shower, if you know what I mean, occasionally.
Okay.
But you could still hear them, so it was kind of near them, so you could hear them but not see them during certain times. That's my understanding. But I didn't actually go and watch it or anything. I just heard about it after the fact when I was like, I wonder if there's a world record. I wonder what the world record is. Okay, that's pretty long. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be anyway. And yes, designer cardboard. New Zealanders and Australians will be finally able to see me during the day. And I do have one super special guest who will be on at 10 p.m. UK time. I'm not going to say who, but their initials are EL. And yep, I'm going to say no more than that.
It's not your EL deck.
No.
It's a
The actual game has come to life.
Oh, that would be
gonna
amazing.
have it,
Imagine
gonna be
someone
talking.
dressed up with all the cards. They have it. Sally made me the little hat, but imagine if there was a jacket. I just pinned all the cards to the jacket.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's going to be your Games Expo outfit, though, right, Bez?
It's not enough red. Not enough red.
Yeah. Oh wow. You could have it originally black and white, and then as you're walking round Games Expo, you could take a red pen and people could colour in some of the cards.
Alternatively, I could sort of, if I got a very cheap jacket and affixed it to it, and I kind of spray painted, kind of just a little bit, just a fine mist of red onto it. So a waistcoat.
I think maybe I need to come up to London and we'll make you some special outfits out of your L tech. I'm sure I can find some red paint somewhere. Though, alas, I'm not sure I have any time before Games Expo. It'll be next year's outfit then.
Hello, Panic. Were you here when I was talking about you? But yeah, there's Panic. I'll be playing within 4 hours' time. So yes, that is what we're all up to. Yeah, share, spread the word if any of that sounds interesting. And as always, we are going to raid someone. So I will do !raid. Please, if you're watching this live on Twitch, get ready to copy paste that message and see what's going on. There are no board gamey people on today that I see. I mean, there is Alex, who writes for Dicebreaker, but Alex, I've never actually seen Alex play board games on stream, which is interesting. But instead, we are going to go to a musician, Erin Shea Live, who I do very much enjoy, and they are absolutely wonderful people. Erin, Shay, and Simon has such amazing energy, and so, yep, Erin, Shay, live. I should warn you that they are Australian, and there might be a little bit of swearing potentially. But, yep, hello again. And there is only one thing left to say, as always. Unless I've forgotten anything. I mean, I hate saying bye-bye, but it has to be done. Bye,
I don't think there's anything else, so bye.
Bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is the end of the show. Bye bye. Bye bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is the end of the show. And now bye bye. Bye bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, Alex. Bye bye, Time Roller. Bye bye, Panic. Bye bye, Designer Cardboard. Bye bye, Janice. Bye bye, Jess. Nikita's already gone. But bye bye, everyone. Bye bye, Lurkers. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Can stay here and stare at me, or you can nip out early, but I'm going to stare at you for 20 seconds. Awkward laughs. Oh, don't be muting yourself, Jess. We can't hear your...
You can't hear me awkwardly laughing.
Yeah.
Or cackling.
I'm just lucky I got a panda.
Exactly.
Where's
I don't have
Frankie
a
gone?
panda.
I just suggested
I
it
only
to a
have
cat.
jelly beans. Jelly beans.
Or just eat them then. Just sit there and stuff them in.
That's the end.